Okay. So the
One.
question was on behalf of Amelia's mom. And so tell me a little bit about what's going on. Is she not remembering as well as she once did, that kind of thing?
Yes, that and she talks a lot about the past stuff that happened maybe in the 60s and the 70s, and her short-term memory is fading away. You know,
Okay.
and
So,
she really don't understand. Like what's going on with the COVID. And why she can't go certain places, and why we couldn't go out of town for the holidays and things like that. And you have to continue to repeat and explain why we can't go. And then I would show her things on TV about COVID, and and because of her hearing loss, I do a lot of writing, and I have to either write notes on my phone or on a piece of paper to communicate with her, because
okay.
she can read lips good, but mm,
Is she angry?
uh, sometimes she gets that way. Yes,
Okay. And does she speak in ways that she never did before? Maybe use
yes,
language that she never did before? Okay.
yes.
So
Especially if I go hiding, if I go in the bathroom and I can hear her using those languages. I said, "Oh wow,
yeah, and never, that wouldn't have been her. That wouldn't have been her.
no,
So here's the way this goes. And I want you to be encouraged, but no matter how our brain is hurt, it tends to lose things in the same order. And so the very first things that are injured and go away are usually inhibitions and judgment, and then fine motor skills. And then those things just keep getting worse and worse. And the last things that are lost are the larger motor skills, and long-term memory is very strongly protected by the brain. That's the next to the last thing that's lost. And the last thing that goes is organ function. The brain protects organ function the longest. So you can have someone with an apparently very healthy, functional body, and their that sequence of events that I've just described, it's very similar to someone who has, gets hit in the head, or someone who, uses alcohol. You recover from that, obviously in a few hours, but the same sequence occurs no matter how the brain is hurt. The
hmm.
story that I want to tell you to encourage you and is the very first person I ever met who told me a story like that. And I went to a gathering of people using the product in Florida, and this would have been probably late 2005 or early 2006. And I had no idea that it would do what I'm about to tell you it can do. It was at a conference about zeolite, and there was a man in the hallway, a little tiny man, and he was all excited, and he was telling a story about his wife. He was in his 80s.
Hmm.
And interesting detail about this little guy, he was the 1952 Olympic gold medalist in springboard diving.
Hmm.
So, usually those guys have those chiseled physiques, and they can flip and spin and spin and
Mm-hmm.
flip. And I'm the opposite of that. I'm 6'4", and I can do a few dives, and I have been fortunate to help coach some of our local high school divers, because I get a kick out of that. But
Wow.
he was telling a story about his wife, and his wife was on the same path that you're describing your mom. Okay.
Hmm.
And what happened was it really showed up in her driving. and her remembering things. And she would, um, just hop in the family car and head out and go do something. But it got to the point that she didn't really know where she was going or where she'd been.
Mhm.
And she'd scrape the garage door going in and out, and the car got pretty beat up. And then one day, she hopped in the car and left and couldn't find her way back.
Mhm.
And at that point, I mean, this guy dearly, dearly loved this woman. But at that point, he felt that her life was on the line. And she wound up institutionalized, obviously
Mm.
lost her driver's license and wound up in an institution. He got a hold of, Rick Deitz's early product, which is very similar to what we have now. I believe what we have now is the ultimate expression of this idea, and thought maybe it would help her. So whenever he went, he made sure that she got some, and they began to see improvements. And so her caregivers at the institution agreed to help make sure that she got some, you know, several times a day, just to drop her several times a day. Well, she began to improve, and by the time that he started doing this, she didn't realize it was him that was coming to visit her. It was
Mm.
that serious.
Mhm.
But remember, the beauty of our brain is it has, it's called plasticity. It'll reassign things to different places,
Mhm.
but it's always attempting to make new connections.
Right.
Up until the day we die, it tries to reestablish, reaches out, tries to make friends with the other nerves around it. Okay. And
Okay.
she began to improve, and he came to visit her, and she knew it was him.
Wow.
And essentially, what happened was they rekindled their original love, and which was, obviously a lifetime spectacular relationship between the two of them. And she began to remember more and improve. And the punchline is she got to come home, she continued to improve, and he said she got her driver's license back.
Wow.
That's crazy. Yeah,
Wow.
that's the story. That's the first thing I heard. I mean, so I don't know how you get a better story than his.
True.
And oh my gosh, oh my, I don't know exactly how I'm going to tell you this one. Well, I can tell you a little bit, but I said that I coach springboard divers a little bit, and one of the guys that I coached most recently, our pool was built in 1976, which is when I came back from the military. And this last year, it developed enough problems that it got decommissioned, so we don't have a swimming pool in my little town anymore. But there's a family in our town that has adenomyeloneuropathy, which is kind of like um, MS or Lou Gehrig's or something like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the this young man that I was working with, I knew his uncle. His uncle had married a girl from my son's class. My son actually took her to the prom. When they got married, they borrowed my little black Camaro to, drive after the wedding. And he went to the Marines, and he started getting that effect. And by the time that I was coaching his kind of his cousin nephew kind of thing. I don't know exactly the lineage, but
Mhm.
he's also part of the family. The guy that I knew that had been held the record, it was still on the board, and became the Marine, and then started getting sick. Um, he was in a wheelchair, and so it was
Mm.
kind of tragic. But uh, the junior year that I was coaching his nephew, he made an error on the diving board, and by just a very few points, um, his uncle or his older cousin kept the record, and so the two of them, we're talking afterward, and he was encouraging him, but said, I want you to continue on. I'm glad you didn't break it today, but I want your name on the board. And the next year he did put it on the board. But some members of their family perished because of that issue. And another interesting thing about Rick Deitz, who is our biochemist, when he was in college at Duke University, he worked with Gertrude Elion, who is a doctor in cancer research that won the Nobel Prize in cancer research. He worked on a specific chemotherapy drug called camptothecin. And Rick always said that you give me a lab rat with cancer and I can cure it with camptothecin. So it's that good. Tragically, when they started human trials, that chemotherapy would adhere to a unique human circulating protein called circulating human albumin, and it would become real gummy and it would plug up the kidneys. And he spent his whole undergraduate career trying to figure out how to not make that so sticky. That chemo is still used, but it's still dangerous for human use, and they have to be monitored for kidney function if they use it. Well, Rick went on, and he also started working with peptides, which are specific kinds of proteins, and he got very interested. He worked in ones from cone snails, and then he moved on to ones from cobra venom. And one of the products from his little company that he calls NutraPharma is an intervention for that adenomyeloneuropathy and MS. And he says nobody cares if you help people with the adenomyeloneuropathy one, because it's a very small market. He said the MS market is gigantic, and the drug companies are making a fortune from it. So you go in there and they're going to start, tearing you up. But along the way, he began to notice and get interested in the importance of heavy metals poisoning us. And he ran across the concept of zeolite, which is a naturally occurring mineral that absorbs those poisons in nature. And he thought, if we could make it small enough and clean enough, it could be taken orally, and then it would leave the gut, circulate throughout our bodies, and it would clean those things up, and there should be enormous benefits from that. And that led to the product that we now call Daily Detox Plus, which is our liquid zeolite product that all of us, love so dearly. And so that originally went to a little company back in August of 2005, and that was when I first heard about it. My wife is really, really smart business mind. I know enough about you as a group of women that you're all really bright and educated and capable of doing whatever you set out to do. I'm married to one like that, and Robin Hood still wins every competition crossing the stream. Okay. Always get outsmarted, but that's okay, And so I looked at the mechanism and I thought that was really important. And to this day, I believe it's one of the most important things that I've come across in my life. And it won't be just for your mom. It'll be for you and every member of the human race. I love to work with people that are still high performance, that are striving to whatever it is. I know a lot of you girls work incredible, difficult jobs, in child development and child delivery. That has to be an enormous challenge every day. I remember how tired I was. We adopted 2 kids and went to one of the births. And I was exhausted. The mother actually invited us to go to the birth, if you can imagine that. So that was pretty cool. And now these kids are 30, and my son was on the phone upstairs when you guys called. He works over in Gillette in the mines and rebuilds the biggest machines in the world. He's really, really gifted that way. But no matter what your circumstance, You run better if you run clean. And these poisons displace the biologically active metals. That's how they hurt you. They go in and they get stuck. The really cool thing is it's the same reason, the exact same reason that it gets stuck inside of the zeolite cage. So it's poisonous for the same reason that we can pull it out. And I love that because it makes it simple to understand. You know, it goes someplace and gets stuck. You know, it's January now. If you had the January calendar up and you stuck a, you know, to the front of the fridge, but the magnet you put on was one of those huge ones, and you couldn't get it ever off again, well, it's January forever.
Right.
I mean, if you can't turn the pages, well, that's the same. Every one of our processes in us has the same. I like that one. I see you smiling, Sister Grace. You like that one too? Yeah, it's for January forever instead of being able to change the date, you know. And that's the way it works. That, you know, I'd probably ask you guys to look at the brain neuron degeneration in the presence of mercury. I think we've watched that together before. And that's where mercury peels the insulation off of the nerves in the brain. And I would strongly recommend that you get that to Sister Amelia, because that's what's happening in Mom's brain. Literally, probably mercury that's taken the insulation off of the tiniest nerves in the brain. And the tiniest nerves, instead of being called myelin like it is in the body, it's called tubulin. It's protein, like the plastic on a wire. That's the insulation on it and the support for it. And mercury dissolves that in seconds. So however much mercury is in your brain, and if it was a lot, I mean, if it was parts per million, you'd be dead. So it's only parts per billion, and it's just hurting all of us. You know, right now, your mom's accumulated enough. And here's another interesting thing. Your brain actually begins to lose weight and have openings and pores in it. They call them wormholes. And then there's plaques. You know, you hear about the plaques that are associated with dementia. I believe that is those proteins that failed to be assembled. They still get made, they just can't assemble. So instead of being little bracelets made out of girls' pop beads, it's just a pile of pop beads. Did you girls have pop beads when you were little? So you know how it pops together? That's the same way those proteins hook together. And the mercury unhooks them. And so now you just got a pile of beads instead of making your bracelets and necklaces like you did. That makes sense?
Makes sense.
That's it.
Wow.
That was a lot on that little question. You ever ask me another question, I might go till morning. But it would be very likely, it will help her. And exactly how that goes, the mode of action is there, the magnitude of effect is there. We hope that we've got enough time. Obviously, the worse it is, the less, you know, the more it takes to come back. But after hearing his story about his wife, I thought, okay, you know, that's a miracle in my world, but that happened in his world.
Wow.
So, and you know, you watched it go away, so you'll know what it looks like if it's coming back. You know, maybe the filters will work better. Maybe she won't use those words. I mean, that's the filters and inhibitions, the judgment. Those are the first things that are taken.
Wow. Wow.
And it's predictable.
Wow.
You know, I don't know your mom, but I had a pretty good idea what the deal was, because that's what happens when the brain gets hurt.
So of course the doctors say that it was because she had a stroke, a mini stroke that took her hearing away.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's a little different breed of cat. I mean, that's actually a part of the brain that got damaged, and now probably that part is gone. But you go back to the plasticity of the brain; it'll attempt to reassign those duties in another way as best as it can. This is I haven't told anybody this at all yet, but my sister's married to a guy that's 15 years older than she is. He's a brilliant engineer. He worked at Area 51 testing the strength of the atomic weapons when they were being developed. He worked on the wings of the SR-71, which is, even though it's retired, it's the highest and fastest plane that we had for spy planes, that needle-looking thing. And every single locomotive and coal mine, those huge trucks, has one of his products in it. That's the kind of smart. He had a descending aortal aneurysm, and during the surgery had a stroke, a bad one. And this has been like 5 years ago now. He's been on hospice for a couple of years. And my sister is the one that takes care of him. Oh my goodness. Well, you can kind of imagine what that would be like. And I figured, she probably, she's always been supportive and would listen to me about my ideas. She's a nurse, she's a medical person, and we get along great. I mean, I dearly love her and him. But I figured she probably wasn't spending, probably wasn't using the product for him. And so the last time I was there, I just set 15 bottles on the table. And that's the big package. That's the $1,000 package. And I said, would you do me a favor? Your horse is getting old. Put it on your horse's cookie when you give the horse a cookie. Give this to your husband every day, several times a day. And I didn't really think about it. You don't realize exactly what's going on, but I talked to her yesterday, and she was concerned because his evaluation had improved, and they were talking about taking him off of the hospice. Which sounds great, except that's the only help she gets.
Right.
Is when they come. That gives her a chance to go shop or something. So, there's weird little twists of fate. But he's cheerful about it. And this is pretty graphic stuff, you guys, but one of the challenges that we run into with developing children, I'll just shift this to developing children, is language skills, or being interested, or knowing, family members that are coming in. You have to know about this if you're working in the field you are. I mean, so many of the children now have developmental problems. I have a niece that's less than a quarter mile from me right now that we were taking care of 40 years ago when she got her baby shots and stopped developing. Just stopped developing. And that happened, the day after she got her baby shots. And now she's 40 years old, and I think she's the oldest survivor of that particular batch of vaccine.
Wow.
So something was wrong with it. It wasn't just the normal potential vaccine problems, but the things we see when they begin using these products are stuff like recognizing dad or recognizing grandma when she comes into the room, picking up a toy and playing with it. All of a sudden, not just speaking a word, but maybe the first thing they say is a whole sentence, because they've been listening and learning, but they couldn't form words. And all of a sudden, they'll just say a whole sentence, that kind of thing, and start developing normally, get into school. And she has, like I say, she's the oldest survivor. It's another one of those, I don't know if it's cruel or what, but her dad died tragically, just maybe about 3 years ago. And so mom's staying home taking care of her all the time. And, we never did get her safe or back to normal, but she's the only one that's lived this long. So did we help her or not? Sometimes life is cruel. I don't care. So it's not easy for anybody. But there you go. Those are some thoughts. But basically, we would like for people to believe when they're born, they're going to develop normally and grow into, find healthy, the ultimate version of themselves, whatever that is. And you can each ask yourselves, and I know some of you are on this trajectory already. Am I improving? Am I getting better already? What am I noticing about myself? I was thinking the other day about Sister Aziz because I saw her on a call last Wednesday about Restore, which is the micronutrients. And I happened to think about it because I saw her name on the call, and I thought they'd maybe like me to say a little something. And I thought, isn't that interesting? You think, why is there such a thing as diabetes that's associated with childbirth? Why? And then I got to thinking how important some of those micronutrients are, the biologically active trace minerals and metals are, in sugar metabolism. Things especially like chromium and vanadium. Could it possibly be that as Sister Aziz uses Restore and gets chromium and vanadium back in her system? Cinnamon, by the way, is another place where there's vanadium, and chromium's in, a lot of good healthy things in diet. But wouldn't it be cool if that problem reversed? And the daily detox also helps move sugar on down the line. I saw in a program about mice who had their pancreas removed and were able to survive with vanadium being the only thing that acted like insulin or imitated insulin. And I thought that was really, really interesting. So I don't know how that's going. You got any updates, Sister Aziz? How are you doing? Oops, are you guys gone?
Hello, Sister Aziz? We're not hearing you. Oh, we just lost. Oh.
I think she's trying to come on.
Oh, that's a great question. I'm actually glad you asked it because I have had a major transformation, having had a very hard pregnancy on my body. My sugars had never seen 200, 400, and just simply taking the Daily Detox Plus Restore. You guys can't hear me?
Yeah, we're getting close.
Yes,
I can hear you.
Okay, so just simply taking the Daily Detox Plus of the Restore.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Well, I hear you, Chip, but I don't think you're hearing me. But literally just taking that, my sugars dropped over 150 points, and they just have been going down and down and down into normal ranges now. So I have been chuckling because initially I only wanted to hear about Daily Detox Plus and Restore. However, I've come to really widen my width and breadth that now I'm on Daily Detox Plus, Restore, the CBG oil, the Relieve. The Relieve has really transformed my life because I've had pain every day at the site of my C-section cut, every day, all day, nonstop. It just always hurt, and I just, thought it was just kind of just my lot right now to just have to deal with. And long story short, the Relieve, I put it on and then it immediately stopped hurting. So I got a chance to misbehave and stay up all night from Saturday to Sunday morning. Ended up taking the Dream, went to bed for 2.5 hours, and I've never, ever, ever done an all-nighter and just had a perfect day for the rest of the day and didn't go back to bed till like 12:31 the next morning. So I never typically stay up late like that. So it's been really interesting to just see the synergy and how my body is literally coming back together again as I'm trying to gear up for this next pregnancy prayerfully sometime after October. So it's been a real blessing. I've never had such an amazing gift because, when you have a baby, my baby's 9 months old, I want to see his grandchildren. So, it's really, really important to me that my maximum wellness is reestablished, my maximum life. And so kicking disease, despair, and discomfort away has been life transformational.
Okay,
Wow.
we are, I think, out of time, so I'm gonna stop the recording now. And I think we all have a couple other Zooms to go to. So whoever shared this with you, please get back with them. And we thank Sister Amelia, Chip, and Sister Aziz for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.